Hello everybody, my name is Necroxis. Yes, this video is probably like a week, maybe even more late, but I'm going to be giving you some of my general thoughts about BlizzCon 2018, all the things that we learned, and some of the controversy that came with it, because you can't talk about BlizzCon without talking about a certain glaring flaw that we will talk about at the end of this video. So, the way this video is structured, first of all, it's freeform. I have notes basically, but it's only really what was announced, so I don't forget. And then I'm just kind of going off of, what's in my brain. So, and also it's going to be ordered what is least important to me and ending with what is most important to me, except for Diablo Immortal, which will be the very last thing we talk about, because it's separate and needs to be discussed separately from everything else, for multiple reasons. So, BlizzCon this year, the opening ceremony, before it even began, we had Destiny 2 Forsaken, which is their first expansion, I think. I'm not a Destiny player, just FYI. I didn't play Destiny 1, I don't play Destiny 2. But, I guess the developer of one of the new expansions, Steve Cotton, I believe was his name, yeah, announced that Destiny 2 is free for all players if you have a Battle.net account. It's going to be free until November 18th, which is 2 days from now. So, if you didn't know, you can get Destiny 2 Vanilla, the base version of the game, completely for free. I downloaded it myself. I haven't even touched it yet, but it's a free game, so why would you not take advantage of it? The game is free once you get it on your once you download it, but if you don't download it before November 18th, then you're just not going to be able to get it. So once it's November 19th, you will no longer be able to get it for free. So just FYI, just go download the game. It's not like it's free just until November 18th. You have until November 18th to actually get it. So just it's not going to include the expansion, but if you play the game, if you don't play the game and you want to try it out, that's pretty cool. So anytime you get anything for free, I'm always a fan of. So there we go, Destiny 2. We had the opening ceremony. We had Mike Morhaime stepping down for Alan Brack. That was actually very emotional for both of them, as well as me a little bit, because Mike Morhaime is, I love how weird and awkward he always is in his opening speech, and he definitely knew what he was doing, because he presided over Blizzard when it became a billion-dollar company. So, farewell, Mike Morhaime. Thank you for all of the amazing games, even if I didn't like every single one of them. You definitely made the gaming industry a better place, so thank you. Now, we get to some of the announcements. These aren't going to be in order, but I just want to get those first two out of the way. Next on the list of things I don't actually care about is Hearthstone. Sorry, Hearthstone fans. If you love Hearthstone, more power to you. I'm so happy for you. It's just not for me. I've tried upwards of 10 plus times to really get into the game, and as someone who doesn't want to put actual physical real money into the game, I smash right into a wall where I just can't do anything, and I can't compete with people who just drop $200 on every single expansion to get all the cards. And love it or hate it, you can't deny that happens with many people, and I just kind of gave up on it. But the new, I haven't been playing for a couple expansions now, so I don't even know anything about the game anymore, based on how much card games change. But the new expansion is called Rastakhan's Rumble, and it basically centers around a bunch of Loa spirits for each class. Some of them don't seem to make much sense to me, personally, as someone who knows the lore. Like, why is, for example, why Shrivala is the Paladin Loa, when literally the most obvious choice was just introduced in Battle for Azeroth with Razan. I don't know if Razan's going to even be in the cards. Maybe he was announced as something else, and I just haven't heard that news yet. But based on the cursory glance and the very little amount of information I was looking up on it, just because I was curious, each class is represented by a Loa. I don't have the whole list off the top of my head. It's just that Shrivala was the one that was announced during the opening ceremony as the Paladin Loa, and I don't really know why. It's confusing to me, but good luck, Hearthstone fans. There's also going to be a new keyword, which is overkill, and basically if you do more from what I understand, let me read it real quick. Overkill, which will allow a weapon or a minion to attack more than once per turn, If its previous attack destroys a minion by dealing an amount of damage to it that is at least 1 point greater than that minion's health. So, for example, throwing it out there, if you're fighting something that has 4 health, and your minion or your weapon has 5 health, and you kill it, you killed it by more than 1. There are other card games that have this effect. I'm not sure what they're called in other ones. But then you'll be able to do an action again. So that's pretty cool. Supposedly there is also another solo gameplay thing that's going to be coming in called Rumble Run. So if you enjoy Hearthstone, that's cool for you. I love the passion of people who like Hearthstone and the developers of Hearthstone. It's just not a game for me, so I don't play it. But, you know, having quit, I no longer rage about it online when I'm playing it, so I have no ill will toward the game anymore. It's just not something for me. So, after that, the next franchise that I care a little bit about, I guess you could call my interest in Overwatch interested but disenchanted, I guess would be a good way to describe it. I'm interested in the world of Overwatch, and I'm interested in the characters of Overwatch. I just have no desire to actually play the game itself. And I find myself hard to care a lot, like on a Warcraft or a Starcraft or other franchise levels, about the story, because it's not in the game. Again, I've been saying this from literally the second that Overwatch was announced. I would be super down on Overwatch as a franchise and as a world if the story was in the game. And just having little events here and there and having characters yell things to each other doesn't constitute having the story in the game to me. So then you have things like cinematics and comics, and all those things are fine if the game also had the story in it. So those are my general thoughts on Overwatch. They haven't changed from last year or the year before that. But Overwatch players got a new hero and a new cinematic. Cinematic was called Reunion. It was about McCree, and it featured the new hero, Ashe, who is looks super cool. Jennifer Hale. I'm always fine with Jennifer Hale. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I'm sick of Jennifer Hale, but I have yet to become sick of Jennifer Hale, and she voices the new character. Basically a female gunslinger, essentially, if you think about it thematically and aesthetically, kind of the gender-bent McCree. She has a rifle shotgun thing, but then she also pulls out another shotgun for one of her abilities to blast people back. But she can use her rifle kind of as a sniper rifle. And she has probably the coolest ultimate in the game. Her big, mustachioed, top-hatted Omnic named Bob, who comes in and hits a bunch of people and then starts shooting his miniguns on his arms. And, cool. The cinematic was great. I loved it. Bob is so interesting and funny. Ashe is cool. They also showed off another character at the very end called Echo, who everyone assumes is, and Jeff Kaplan basically confirmed, is going to be the next hero, but we just don't have enough about her yet. She's like a really crazy looking, if the Omnics now were like Omnics 1.0, Echo is like Omnic 2.0. She's like a vastly more improved looking Omnic, and I'm very curious to see what her whole deal is, because she kind of had like a little bit of like a flirty deal going on with McCree in that trailer. McCree was getting all the honeys. He was getting Ashe. Clearly, I don't care what Blizzard says, Ashe and McCree were definitely banging, or they banged at one point, because there's some sexual tension there, and also he's getting macked on by this new crazy Omnic a little bit. But so that's Overwatch. So Overwatch is cool. Again, I don't dislike the game at its core like I feel like I do for Hearthstone. It's just shooters aren't my thing, really, so I don't really play them. But the thing is, shooters aren't my thing and I don't play them, but I want to like Overwatch, but I don't. Like, that's the problem that I have right now. I really want to like Overwatch because I love the cast of characters, but I don't like the game. So it's kind of like, I don't know, I find myself kind of screwed on Overwatch, and I'm very conflicted. Next, we have Heroes of the Storm announced their new hero, the first original hero from the Nexus, which means it's not from any of the other Blizzard franchises. Her name is Orphea, and I just want to say, Heroes, I love Heroes of the Storm. If we went from Overwatch, where I'm like interested but I hate the game, for Heroes, I'm like, I love the game, but some design choices really frustrate me, and I wish they would fix some things like Quick Match and MMR in general. But overall, I would say I really love Heroes of the Storm. I know a lot of people were really upset because Orphea is an original character, which again means she's not from any of the other franchises. She's from the story of Heroes of the Storm. She's the daughter of the Raven Lord. If you've been paying any attention to the comics they've been putting out, I think there's 3 now, 2 or 3. I have read all of them. But again, I feel the same way about the story in this as I do the story in Overwatch, where like the story is not in the game. But for Overwatch, it's different because Overwatch is actually like a coherent world. It was built that way from the ground up, and so it has like a persistent story and a timeline for all the characters and major events. Whereas Heroes of the Storm was out for like 3 or 4 years, and then all of a sudden they were like, well, I don't know, whatever, let's make a story for it. So, whereas Overwatch, I'm like, I want more of the story. For Heroes, I'm like, there's story, but I never expected there to be story, so I don't, cool, I guess. And I'm bringing all this up because there were a lot of people I know online who were upset that Orphea was the only character that they announced. And I could understand that because, in one regard I understand that, but in another I don't, which I'll get to a little bit. In one regard I can, because I could have sworn, and I can't tell if it's just a lot of us heard misinformation and then spread it to everyone else, and we just kind of like were feedback looping the incorrect information, which does happen online. But I could have sworn at some point, either Blizzard or someone said, connected to Heroes, that they were going to announce a new hero, but then they were going to tease a second hero in either the panel or the opening ceremony, and there was like nothing. We only got Orphea. So I can understand from that regard, but if it was misinformation that was just like feedback looped into the community, then okay, it's not Blizzard's fault. I am a little surprised they didn't show off 2 characters, because at BlizzCon, when I went, they showed off Alexstrasza and Hanzo, so it was cool. And they tied them together in their own cinematic, which was really fun. Orphea, to get to Orphea as herself, unlike other people, I don't really care that she's the only character and from the Nexus. I think she looks super cool. I think her abilities are very, very visually fascinating. And when I first was watching it, it reminded me a little bit of kind of like the Blight from Dark Souls 3. I don't remember what the actual name of it called, but like the dark, shadowy goop that is kind of like pervasive behind the scenes in Dark Souls 3 is like the real villain of the franchise. I very much had that kind of feeling when she has that one ability where the goop comes out with teeth and like slams onto the ground. I was like, that shit is so cool looking, and she looks... I'm a big fan of skill shot heroes, even if I'm not super good with them. I just like them as an idea, and I like to think that I'm good at them, but I'm okay. Characters like Chromie and Li Ming and Jaina and Kel'Thuzad. Actually, all 4 of those characters I really like to play, and I also actually like those characters from their franchises, so, it's cool. And Orphea looks like she'll fit right in there. She has a lot of skill shot based stuff, so... yeah, they also talked about skins like they always do, and then they talked about a bunch of gameplay changes, but they were really not specific on it at all, so, we'll see what happens on that going forward. But overall, Heroes of the Storm, Orphea, I'm super down. I can't wait. I'm going to buy her the day she comes out, which I think is next. I think it's in a couple days. I think it's coming up on Tuesday she's coming out. Usually the announcement is the announcement, then a week on the PTR, and then she comes out the week after that, because Blizzard's gotten very good at... You can disagree if a hero is overpowered or underpowered when they come out, and I will definitely say there are some heroes that were very underpowered when they first came out. Yrel was a good example. She was kind of shit, and then they fixed her, and she still was kind of shit, and then they fixed her again, and now she's pretty good. A lot of pros swear by her, but it's hard. I guess it's just it's a thing that doesn't fit in my brain. I can't play her super well. But anyway, she's a good example of someone who was underpowered when she first came out. So I'm curious what happens with her. But my point was, Blizzard's gotten very good at creating the exact kit they want for characters so that the PTR only has to be a week, which is really cool. They don't have to have like a month of PTR for a new character. They do like 1 week, almost always. There are some exceptions. Almost always just 1 week of PTR and then the character comes out, which I love. I love the turnover rate on the new heroes and Heroes of the Storm. That's one thing I'll give them a lot of credit for. Even if I am not a fan of the loot box system, which is pervasing Heroes and Overwatch, and basically the same thing for Hearthstone, and probably will be in Diablo Immortal, so, that's the new way to make a lot of money, is to put RNG behind loot boxes. But anyway, Heroes of the Storm, great. I'm going to get to World of Warcraft, classic. I guess I should have done this before, but I figured, you know, I'll put the two Warcraft topics together. If I was following my list, this would happen probably before even Overwatch. But World of Warcraft Classic, I'm actually surprised, and I give Blizzard credit. I will fully eat crow on this one, because I've publicly said multiple times there was no way they were going to just give Classic away for free. And they're not, but for free, they're basically giving it away for free. If you're playing Warcraft right now, you're going to get Classic for free. Literally, all you have to do is be subscribed to World of Warcraft, and you'll have access to both the game as well as Classic. I was almost positive they were going to make you pay for Classic. I was expecting it to be like $30 or $40, as well as having I thought the subscription would work for both, but I was positive they were going to make you pay for Classic, and they're not. So, you know, I've done some work for Blizzard editing and recording some stuff in the past, so they threw a couple of years of subscriptions at me, and I actually had a subscriber, send me a year subscription as a thanks, which was I was very honored. So I'm subscribed until like 2020. So, you know, Classic is great. Being able to play Classic without having to pay for anything extra is great. I'll definitely play Classic, but only because I want to record some of the very few, because there weren't many, but the very few cool story quest lines in the game. Primarily the Onyxia one, because I have a lot of nostalgia for the Onyxia one. It's like the one thing I have a lot of hardcore nostalgia for vanilla. Maybe my favorite reveal from World of Warcraft ever still remains the Great Masquerade for the Alliance, which is when you find out that Lady Katrana Prestor is Onyxia. And Onyxia shows up in the throne room and fights you, and you fight her with Bolvar, and a bunch of her dragons are guards. It's still... This was before, really, when I watched this in vanilla. I knew the basic story of Warcraft, but I really wasn't a fan of like the lore in like a hardcore sense. But that was like a big step forward to me being like, this is so fucking awesome. I want to be a fan of this story, and I look forward to doing that again, even though it includes the mind-numbingly infuriating Blackrock Depths rescue quest chain, which I can't wait for everyone else who's never played Classic to try to do to get attuned to Onyxia. It's just, the tears are gonna be so salty, and I'm gonna have so much schadenfreude loving it. In other news, I'm kind of a terrible person in some regard, because I really cannot wait. I've been warning everyone who never played vanilla and are like, we want vanilla, it was the better time when the game was great. And I was like, I played vanilla, and y'all don't really know what you're talking about. So now I'm sitting here like, I can't wait for vanilla to come out in next summer so I can see all the people who insisted that the game was better then, but never actually played it back then. I cannot wait for their reactions when they play the game, how it actually was. Oh, I'm so excited. The Schadenfreude's gonna be great. It's gonna be so good. Just gotta get some popcorn and just watch release day in the next week. And damn, it's going to be some nice entertainment. So, that's Classic. It's launching in summer 2019. We don't have an exact date yet, but summer 2019 can actually go all the way to, I believe, for Blizzard's calendar summer, what they call summer, I believe it goes all the way up to September, like 19th, or something like that. So, it could come out as late as that, or as early as June. So, who knows, but it'll be cool. So, kudos to you, Blizzard. I definitely thought you were going to have to pay for it beyond a subscription, but you don't. So, great. That's awesome. Next, we have World of Warcraft Battle for Azeroth. We have two pieces of information here. We had the amazing Lost Honor little cinematic. It was I was about to call it a mini cinematic because it's not nearly as long as the other Starfang full-fledged cinematic, which happened earlier on this year. But it features Starfang and Anduin having a conversation about the current events. I'm sure if you're watching this channel, you've seen it, so I don't have to explain it to you. It was great. I have my reaction to it up if you want to watch it. The interesting thing is, the more that I watched it, the more that my perception about Lost Honor and about the Battle for Azeroth story as a whole, drastically changed. Not for the worse or for the better, but just my perception of what I think maybe they're trying to make the story actually be. And it should be obvious because they talked about this when they announced Battle for Azeroth. I believe one of the very last things they said when they announced it last year at BlizzCon was, is it worth fighting this war if the planet gets destroyed in the process? And a major theme with Saurfang is kind of like this warrior soldier's PTSD that he has, that he's trying to get past, but he's failing, and all of these horrible things have happened to Saurfang, someone who by all rights in Orc culture would have died on the battlefield a long time ago. You know, he lost his son in Northrend, and he saw the rise of Garrosh and the splintering of the Horde for the first time. And now he's seeing it again, and he's tried to do something, but he can't, because unlike Garrosh, Sylvanas really doesn't honor the idea of honor. And she says it, that's not me insulting her, she says it out loud. She said, what use of honor is there for a corpse, Saurfang? Is almost verbatim what she said to him. So it's very interesting watching this character who, you can tell, he's basically tried to kill himself twice now. And he's done it, I'm trying to think of a good way to put it that would be parallel to real life. I guess suicide by cop is the closest one I could get to. I know this is grim. I know this is grim things to talk about, but it's kind of what the feelings of it kind of what was being brought up for me while I was watching Lost Honor more and more. Saurfang was basically about to commit suicide by Alliance army in the first cinematic before Zakan saved him. And then in Lordaeron, when he stays behind and doesn't follow Sylvanas as they're escaping, it's basically him trying to do it again. And so it's this guy who's tried and failed to basically commit suicide twice, but still even do so in a way where he perceives it as protecting the Horde, even in his final suicidal moment. Because he's trying, even if he would have died, he would have killed some Alliance on the way out, no doubt. He fucking Saurfang. So even then, he's weakening the Alliance. And if he would have been able to stop Anduin, you know, that would have made a major blow in Lordaeron. So the more that I was watching this, and I basically my whole thing about Saurfang is I really love what they're doing with Saurfang. I hate the memification. That might not be the right term, but the purposeful simplifying of what Saurfang is by people who are fans of Sylvanas just because he opposes her. I really hate that. Even taking it from like out of a perspective of Horde versus Alliance, like, oh, I'm Alliance, I hate the Horde, haha, I hate Sylvanas. But just like a fan of like a narrative, I hate that there are a lot of people who are just dismissing a lot of the subtleties of Saurfang as a character, and basically the struggle that he's gone through. Because there are a lot of people in this real world. I mean, I'm not one of them, but I know a few of them, actually. And there are a lot of others out there that I don't know that are going through this, basically this soldier's PTSD. How do I survive in a world where I disagree with my leaders, but my whole identity is tied to devotion to this faction and this people, and now I see it going off a cliff, and I've tried, and there's nothing I can do. What do I do? And it's very fascinating watching this, and I started thinking about Battle for Azeroth and a lot of the major characters. You know, you have Jaina, you have Anduin, you have Saurfang, you have even Sylvanas counts for what I'll be talking about, but all of these characters having these major mental and emotional major tipping points where they seem like they're on the edge to almost being falling into like oblivion. You know, Saurfang's tried to basically kill himself twice. Jaina lost everything she knew, and she was at the lowest of the low for a long time. She lost Theramore, and then she lost Dalaran, and then she comes home and her people hate her, and her mom basically tells her to fuck off, I'd disown you. And so Jaina has had like this crazy dark arc from a character since, you know, Cataclysm going forward. Saurfang has had it basically from Cataclysm going forward. Anduin lost his father and basically became like majorly depressed in Legion, and doesn't really come out of it until 7.2 with his cinematic with Genin and Velen. And Sylvanas' entire history is basically one of like physical and emotional abuse ever since she's died, and like mental torture. So I'm thinking like these are all the major characters in Battle for Azeroth, and the more that I watched Lost Honor, the more that I got sad. But I think that was the point. Like, I think the depressing nature of it and how sad it made me feel was kind of the point. And I had this realization when I was watching it for like the 6th time, and it was like 2 in the morning, and I was just sitting here watching it again, because I had some people comment on my reaction video, so I went and watched it again, because, you know, whatever. And I just, like, the moment when Sarfang says, in response to Anduin, "Why didn't you kill me?" Because he says, "I was hoping you could stop her." And I just, like, started bawling. Like, I just started crying, ugly crying in my room. Like, all of a sudden, and then suddenly, like, this wave of, like, realization of, like, all the things I was just talking about just hit me all at once. And I was like, shit. Like, I don't know. Blizzard doesn't always do it perfectly, and there are certainly problems with trying to tell, like, a complicated story in this specific way. But I think in a lot of ways, that is probably, like, the overarching, or I guess underlying theme of Battle for Azeroth. Like, all of these severely damaged characters who are trying to pull themselves out of this horrible situation, but then there are just people who are just bringing everyone back. And in this case right now, it's Sylvanas. Even though she's damaged herself, you have Sarfang and Anduin and Jaina and Gen, and all these characters trying to pull themselves out of this horrible situation. But then you have the opportunist, Sylvanas, who uses, like, this crazy, horrible situation of an apocalypse that almost happened in Azeroth to further her own personal agenda. And I promise this whole thing wasn't like a fuck you Sylvanas moment, but it's like, it's reflective of a lot of real world things. Like, not to talk about politics specifically, but there are some people who are in the United States who are political leaders who use very similar tactics to what Sylvanas is using, of manipulation, and I would argue almost mind control in a way. I mean, in Warcraft it's magical, but in real life it's kind of, you know, argumentative mind control, I would say, to kind of drag down everyone else for their own personal agenda. I mean, you could probably guess who I'm talking about, but that's not the point of this. So it's very interesting, and I had this realization with Lost Honor that I never had before, and it was only after like the 6th or 7th time I was watching it, and I kind of had a better appreciation of what the storytellers are trying to do, because I think, again, this is the point. That doesn't change my opinion on any of, like, the gameplay stuff, which I think there's major problems with still. And I'm not saying I suddenly love the story. Like I said, my opinion of the story hasn't gotten better or worse. I've kind of had a new perspective on it without, again, saying better or worse. So that was my way longer than I wanted to recap talking about Lost Honor, but I didn't bring it up in my reaction video because I didn't have that realization the first time I watched it, or even the 2nd or 3rd or 4th time. It was, again, kind of like this, I was just sitting in my room in the middle of the night watching it, and I just started crying, like, ugly tears, and then whoosh, like, this whole realization. It was, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about that, my perspective on that in the comments below, because, I don't know, I think I'm pretty close to being spot on with what I was talking about there. I think definitely this is the point that they're trying to make under the scenes, underneath this whole old gods, Azshara, faction war, explosions that's going on right now. So, I don't know, that's just what I think. So, anyway, talking about Battle for Azeroth, we have the announcement of 8.2, The Rise of Azshara, where Nazjatar is coming up, and we're going to be fighting Azshara in her palace. You know, I'm sure the name will be updated to something else, but right now it's Azshara's Eternal Palace, which is going to have a big 8-boss raid. Blizzard has described it as a Naga hatchery, and they're going to have a boss that's fully underwater, so let's see how they do that. Queen Azshara is going to be in the raid. Something interesting that I've seen multiple devs talk about is they really stressed the name of the patch, Rise of Azshara, as not just a random name that they picked. So, I'm hoping that means this is just the rise of Azshara. This is not the end of Azshara. I'm really hoping she doesn't die in the raid. Again, she's one of my favorite characters. She's my second most favorite. My first was Gul'dan, who's now gone. And my second is now Azshara, who I don't hope goes too soon. Because while Azshara's cool, we haven't, again, seen much of her in the game at this point. We've felt her influence all over the place throughout Warcraft's history. World of Warcraft's history. But we haven't seen the queen herself much in the game. She's shown up probably, personally, maybe 5 times at most on one hand. We have Darkshore, We have the Ferondis stuff in Legion. We have her showing up at the end of a dungeon in Battle for Azeroth 3. I'm sure. I'm thinking I'm missing 1 or 2, so maybe it'll be somewhere in there, but not many. And I want her to be like a super major character. So here's hoping she goes forward past 8.2, but if not, I will revel in all the Queen's glory for as long as I can. Interestingly enough, another thing they're talking about in Rise of Ajar is a completely unrelated piece of story content, which is called Mechagon. It is an ancient gnome city where residents basically are Deus Ex Machina, or Deus Ex Revolution, excuse me, and they begin replacing their body parts with robotic parts, and the more... It's basically reverse Deus Ex, I guess, where the more robotic you are in Deus Ex, the more persecuted you are, but in Mechagon, the more robotic you are, the higher your political standing is. Ooh, sorry, that was a gross, snotty inhale. I'm sorry, I'm a little sick. And they're calling Mechagon a mega dungeon, which is going to have at least 8 bosses and will be limited to Mythic only. But then they said going forward, probably in 8.2.5, they're going to split it into 2 heroic wings, much like Karazhan when they brought that back in 7.1. So, they're introducing Mechagnomes, as you could probably guess with Mechagon. Basically, I'm not saying confirmed Mechagnomes are the new allied race, but they showed off a picture of all of the various customizations of Mechagnomes. Mechagnomes are probably an upcoming allied race. Not to spoil too much about 8.1 and the Battle of Dazar'alor, but there's probably going to be a character. Pay attention when 8.2 comes out. You're going to have a major character that the Alliance quests alongside, and it's probably going to be the eventual leader of the Mechagnomes. And they're probably going to help the Alliance with a problem that they have with one of their leaders based on what happens at the end of the Battle of Dazar'alor raid. And that'll probably be who the leader of the allied race of the Mechagnomes are. Because I don't think that said leader who exists now but needs help is going to become the leader of the Mechagnomes. I mean, you can probably guess what I'm talking about now. I don't think he's going to become the leader. I think he'll get saved by the character who becomes the leader. Because they can't make this character be the leader of 2 factions. And... you know, they can't make Mechatork the leader of the Mechagnomes as well as the regular gnomes. They're going to have a normal character for Mechatork, so he can keep leading the gnomes, because they're not really elevating a normal gnome to become the new leader, from everything we've seen. So, anyway, I don't think Mechatork's going to be the leader of the Mechagnomes. I think he's going to be saved by one of the new characters who will be the new leader of the Mechagnomes. So there you go. 8.2 also going to have flying, so hooray! As well as heroic warfronts and heritage armor for gnomes and Tauren. So that'll be pretty cool. I'm a little bummed out that the gnome heritage armor seems to be kind of like a joke based on how they described it. Basically, you're making like a spaceship to fight trogs, and I don't know. I had this problem with Blizzard and gnomes, and I made multiple videos on this at this point, actually. Where I don't know why they only treat gnomes as a joke, when if you know the backstory of the gnomes, it's real fucking dark, and they deserve to be treated seriously. Like, most of their race got genocided by one of their own people, and they're, like, struggling to survive population-wise, and they're this really cool faction that has this crazy technology that, like, changes the face of warfare on Azeroth along with the goblins. Like, the goblins and the gnomes are, like, the races that made warfare on Azeroth evolve. And it's just, I hate that they make the goblins and gnomes big fucking goofs who never get to be serious. And it just, I want it to be serious, and I hate when I heard the description was like, you're building like a spaceship to fight Trog, isn't that funny? It's like, no, I want like a serious thing. I want like all of the major gnome characters who aren't Mechatork to show up and be like, yo, we gotta pick a new leader. Our fucking leader is like frozen in ice that we can't figure out. And they kind of like, they do what's in the backstory of the gnomes, which is they vote a new leader based on who's the smartest and has the best technology. That's why Mechatork's the leader now, because he invented all this crazy stuff like siege tanks and like the Deep Run Tram and a bunch of other things for the Alliance, and he invents a bunch of other things that we see in 8.1 directly from Mechatork's mind as an inventor. So I really want their thing to be like, alright, we have like Tankmaster, Overspark, and like Fizzcrank the guy at the airship and maybe some other characters show up. Like, we're all going to show our invention, and whoever is the best one is the new leader until Mechatork comes back. Yay! Like a serious thing, not like a joke. So that's why I'm a little bummed out about that. But we'll see. It's still early in the development. Maybe they could change it. And finally, 8.2. Oh, this won't be in 8.2, but it'll probably be in 8.2.5. Worgen and Goblins are getting their models finally updated. So there we go. The panel, or the panel, not the opening ceremony, but the panel for 8.2. The very last slide was a picture of, it was totally black. It had the words "The End" on it with a question mark, I believe, and it had the fish. That was the form N'Zoth was taking when he was talking to Ajara. So, I think it's pretty obvious the hints that N'Zoth will probably be, if not the final boss, then one of the bosses in 8.4. And if that's true, I hope it's Ajara and N'Zoth together, because Ajara doesn't deserve to die in 8.2. So, World of Warcraft. 8.2 will probably come out in spring, because 8.1 is coming out in, 2 weeks from now? And based on raid releases, the actual raid of Dazara Lore won't be out until like February, unless they speed up the time. But they've said they like the raid release of Legion, so comparing it to Legion, the actual raid won't be out till February, which is kind of disappointing because there's not super much to do in 8.1. Well, there is, but it's, for a fact a lot of it's going to be gated to kind of just wait and make you keep playing. So I don't know. We'll see. 8.2 or 8.2 probably will be like April or May, hopefully, and then the raid will probably be out in the summer. And then we'll have BlizzCon next year, which they definitely will be announcing the next expansion. So, there you go. Alright. Whew! Warcraft was a big one. So, next, we only have 2 left, I promise, and this is the one I'm most hyped about. Warcraft 3 Reforged, the HD remaster of the classic, amazing game, Warcraft 3 and Frozen Throne. So the graphics are being updated and they look super great. They're not, they're pretty close, but it's only a remaster, so I wouldn't say it's as good as going from StarCraft 1 to StarCraft 2. That was like an amazing evolution of graphics, but it's pretty damn close to that. And you can still play Warcraft 3 now, and a lot of people do, and it works totally fine. So this is a fully HD updated. They actually even remastered the introduction cinematic to current Blizzard quality, which was pretty damn cool. It's coming out in 2019. Blizzard has said they've totally remodeled the characters and the environments, and it's going to be bringing back the editor tool, which I cannot wait, so everyone can make like current day 2019 maps and stuff. And at BlizzCon, they actually got to play the Culling of Stratholme, and I didn't know until today, when I was looking up information for this video, that they actually changed the Culling of Stratholme map to more represent how it is in the game. Because if you originally played Culling of Stratholme in Warcraft 3, if you imagine the map as a square, Arthas' base was up in the top right, so I have to do opposite. Up in the top right, and you basically had to swoop around the city to take out Mal'Ganis' forces. Now, Stratholme looks exactly like it does in World of Warcraft, where if you imagine the square, Arthas' base starts down here, in the bottom right, basically where you enter the Battle of Stratholme dungeon, and you have to fight your way up into Stratholme's various wings to take out Mal'Ganis' forces. So, they did say they might change a little bit about the lore to fit in what the current story is. But I actually hadn't heard that they were going to physically change what the maps looked like to more fit in with the story. So that has me even like more super hyped for this. It's going to be, it's $40, I believe, for the basic version, $50 for whatever they're Eternal or whatever they're calling the more expensive one. And that gives you some goodies for all the other games. So I'm really excited. There's not much to say on it because it's Warcraft 3, and Warcraft 3 is an amazing game. They basically, that's basically all you have to say. It's cool looking. It's when I first saw Arthas updated, I was like, I actually was speechless. I was taken aback by how amazing I thought it looked, and Because when you think about the HD remaster of StarCraft, it wasn't super graphically improved. I mean, all the models definitely look better, but it doesn't look like amazingly updated. It definitely doesn't look like a 2019 or 2018 or 2017 game. It kind of looks like they took the existing models and they buffed all the the cloudiness and the rust off of it, but then that's basically it. This looks very impressive, and actually I was wrong. It's $29.99 right now, and then the better version is $40, I think. So you can get all the goodies if you want. So I haven't pre-ordered it yet, but I have some Blizzard bucks in my bank that can pay for it, so I'm going to buy it when it gets closer to release. So there we go. Warcraft 3 Reforged. There's not much to say about it because it's the amazing game that always was. I'm super excited to try it again. We're definitely going to be doing a whole playthrough of the campaign. I started a playthrough years ago of the Alliance, and I did the whole Alliance one, or the whole human one, and then I stopped because for some reason Warcraft 3, the original version of it, is very difficult. It's very finicky to record. So I kind of stopped because I had to put all the graphics to the lowest setting, even though I could play it on the highest setting with no problem. But once I started to record it, it just broke everything, and I don't know why. But once this comes out, I assume all that shit's going to be fixed because they said they're going to fix all the problems that exist from updating a 2003 game to 2019. So I'm looking forward to it. So there we go. Now, the last thing that we will talk about is the sad fate of one of my favorite franchises of Diablo. Blizzard announced Diablo Immortal, which is a mobile Diablo game. I'm trying to not editorialize this part right now, but I already failed because I called it... I don't know, it's... If you follow me or you saw my video, you can see that I'm not super thrilled on Diablo Immortal. But I more want to talk about not just the game itself, because there's a million other people who talked about, problems with it. The fact that it seems kind of almost like a reskin of an already existing game. The fact that the company Blizzard's working with, NetEase, is infamous in China even. And China has a lot of game developers who nickel and dime their customers, but NetEase is even infamous in the Chinese market for nickel and diming its players in microtransactions. I don't have to talk about that because everyone else has talked about it. I want to talk a little bit more about the response to legitimate criticism of the game. And response by game journalists. And I've never made a video talking about games journalists are bad, Gamergate, yo, hashtag. But and that's not what I'm talking about here. But I've never really made a video on a topic like this. But I've kind of found myself disgusted with a lot of games journalists who all came out at exactly the same time saying the exact same thing about people who had problems with Diablo Immortal, and there were a lot of YouTubers who kind of looked even worse because I saw a lot of them knee-jerk give their reaction and it wasn't positive, but then a day went by and then on Saturday suddenly all those people were defending Diablo Immortal and they were bringing up the backlash to it as for a reason why they were defending it, which kind of makes them look like giant hypocrites to me. But I'm not going to name any of them, but there were a couple of popular ones. Not on the level of PewDiePie or anything, but, popular gaming, I would say some Let's Players, some people who have YouTube channels that are connected to Blizzard because they have a lot of... they have a lot of financial interest in not pissing them off. And then, essentially what happened is, there's a lot of backlash to Diablo Immortal, and then, when it gets announced, no one's really hype on it. If you watch the opening ceremony, you can tell Wyatt Chang gets progressively more nervous and more unnerved as it goes on, because no one fucking wanted this. So, the more that it goes on, you can tell Wyatt Chang is getting more nervous and more unnerved. And then you have the Diablo What's Next panel, and you have people talking, you have people coming up during the Q&A asking if this is like a late April Fool's joke, which a lot of games journalists got mad at. And then you have the question that was asked, the perfectly valid question, by the way, that gets asked, do you plan on porting this to PC? And then they say no, and then there's booing. And then one of the developers, who personally I think kind of should be fired. I've never called for the firing of a developer ever on anything, but I kind of think the guy who responded to the booing by childishly yelling, "Don't you guys have phones?" Like, I think that guy fucking should lose his job, or at very least no longer ever present something like this on stage, because he came off like a fucking asshole. And I'm sorry if you're mad that your customers are mad, but your customers are mad, and that should be your biggest priority, to figure out how to not make them mad anymore. Not to be an indignant bitch and yell at them. Like, do you have your phone? Of course people have phones, you asshole. That's not what people are booing you for, you idiot. People are booing you for because you hyped up a Diablo announcement, and then you scaled back the hype after you already sold all the virtual tickets, and then you show up and you talk to a PC hardcore audience, and you announce a mobile game. You don't get to be mad at the customer base who are not mobile players because you don't do mobile games. You don't get to be mad at them for being upset that you kind of fed them a dog shit sandwich after you hyped up having filet mignon at BlizzCon. You don't get to. And you saw a bunch of games journalists and YouTubers talking about how entitled gamers are for having that response. They're so entitled for booing a product that they don't want, that was presented at a conference exclusively almost for hardcore PC gamers. How entitled they were. First of all, let's stop using the fucking word entitled, because entitled has kind of lost all meaning at this point by when games journalists and YouTubers begin using it. Entitled, the definition of entitled is believing oneself to inherently deserve privileges or special treatment. When you are paying for a product and you don't get the product that you expect, you're not entitled. You're a consumer. That's how consumers work. If you have been eating high-class meals for 20 years, and the chef that you've always gone to, and you always know that even if he doesn't always perform the best on every single day, in general, you love their food, and you always go to eat their food, if you have that chef suddenly tell you, "Well, sir, I have a new thing you should be super excited for. I will show it to you tomorrow." And then you show up, and he serves you McDonald's, being upset at that is not being fucking entitled, especially because you're paying for it. You're not entitled when you're paying for a product, and then the company you've been loyally paying money to for 20 years or more suddenly shows up and says, "Sorry guys, this super hyped next entry in a franchise that everyone's been wanting, and we talked about getting excited for, it's not a Diablo 4, it's not a Diablo HD remaster, it's not even like a Diablo Netflix series or anything, you're getting a phone game, don't you like it, don't you have phone guys? Haha, stop being entitled and booing us, boo!" Like, that's not entitled. That's not being entitled. That's expecting a quality product for the money that you're paying. Especially people who went to BlizzCon and spent $1,000+ on this idea that there's going to be a cool Diablo announcement, because the first post they made talking about the cool Diablo announcement was months ago. And it was before the last wave of BlizzCon tickets were sold. So I know that there are some people who bought a, $200 or $300 ticket to BlizzCon, spent another $500 on an airplane ticket, spent another $500 on a hotel ticket to go to BlizzCon, partially so they could see this cool new Diablo announcement in person, only to get told it's a phone game. That's not entitled. That's people who spent upwards of $2,000 who got spit in their face by a company they've followed, presumably loyalty, for almost 20 years. That ain't entitled. Of course, the caveat is, because we always have to bring this up, because anytime anyone criticizes game journalists, or anytime anyone criticizes a company who gets criticism, people always say, oh, but there are some anonymous people online who are giving death threats. Obviously, those are bad, and those are the people who should be no longer able to use Twitter or Facebook if they're giving death threats to a company over a fucking video game. But no one's seriously talking about that. Those people are being used as a distraction to ignore from the fact that Blizzard fucked up. And Blizzard fucked up bad. All they literally had to do, they didn't even have to show off a Diablo 4. They didn't have to show off a Diablo HD. I didn't think we were going to get a Diablo 4. In the video that I put out, predictions, I even said multiple times, we're not going to get a Diablo 4. I was like, maybe we'll get, I was like, we're probably going to get a Diablo 2 HD remake. I wasn't expecting it, though, or demanding it. But it's just, you can't hype up people, and then after you sell all these tickets to your super expensive con, a month before it comes out, put out a post and go, don't get too excited, guys. It's like, fuck you. You spent like half the year getting everyone excited, everyone buying tickets and buying these overpriced virtual tickets that you raised the price on this year, just to then go, oh, it's a month before, don't get too hyped, guys, because we don't have everything showing there. And I just want to say one final thing to end this with, so I tried to end this in under an hour. A lot of the defense of Blizzard has been people coming out and saying, well, in their post that they put out, saying not to get hype, not to get too hype, to temper your expectations, a lot of people are saying, incorrectly, by the way, that Blizzard in that post said there would be no Diablo 4 at BlizzCon. People are still saying it to this day, that Blizzard in that post said, quote, there will be no Diablo 4 at BlizzCon. And these people who said this clearly didn't actually read the post, because nowhere does it say, quote, there will be no Diablo 4 at BlizzCon. I think people who were expecting Diablo 4 at BlizzCon were being a little bit too, they were expecting too much, and I didn't think that would be the thing, but you can't say that Blizzard told us that there would be no Diablo 4 when they didn't. All they said was this vague PR jargon statement of, we're working on multiple projects and not all of them will be shown off there. That's not verbatim what they said, but that is the gist of their comments. They definitely didn't say, there would be no Diablo 4, because if they said, quote, there would be no Diablo 4, then yes. The criticism of people expecting Diablo 4 would be unreasonable, and they should be dismissed. But Blizzard didn't say that. And the reason they didn't say that, because they didn't want to lose the hype. They wanted to have their cake and eat it too. They wanted to have the hype, but then have an out with this post, so they then can turn around and say, which is what they did, oh, we said there wouldn't be everything that was going on. Everything wouldn't be shown off at this BlizzCon. There would be no Diablo 4. Ooh. And then you have all these game journalists coming out saying, and all these YouTubers, Blizzard told us there would be no Diablo 4. They didn't. Go read up on that post on the Diablo forums by that community manager. Go read exactly what that post said. It was vague. It was vague on purpose. And we all know why it was vague on purpose. It was vague on purpose to not kill all of the hype. Just to temper it enough so they could still capitalize on the hype to sell tickets, but not enough to cause people to get mad and maybe want a refund. They wanted to keep as much money as they could without pissing people off, but still tempering their hype. So, I don't know, man. Literally all they had to do was do what Bethesda did at last year's E3, which was say, they did their whole conference, they showed all their stuff off, and at the very end they had a 10-second clip of nothing, and then said, Elder Scrolls 6, the end, bye, and then it ended. And everyone was like, oh my god! And they haven't really given any updates on it yet, because the game's like 5 years out of development still. That's literally all they had to do for this. They could have done all of Diablo Immortal. The problem is not that it's a phone game. Like I said, I'm not talking about the actual game itself that much. But the problem is not that it's a phone game. The problem is it's the only thing they showed off. And they showed off only a phone game to a hardcore PC crowd. They could have shown off Diablo Immortal exactly how they did. And then begin to fade out. And then fade in like a 20-second video of nothing. Or if they wanted to put a little bit of work into it, maybe have like Tyrael, we're looking at the World Stone or something. Or some whatever. Looking at the Black Soul Stone, or looking at the shards of the Black Soul Stone after Malthael destroyed it. Just have nothing but like a picture of the ground with smoldering little specks of the Black Soul Stone, and just have Tyrael say some fucking nonsense about, oh, we failed, the Lord of Terror is now going to return. Boom! Diablo 4 logo. No, crisis averted. There would be no problems at all. It was a PR problem. It wasn't the fact that they didn't show off Diablo 4. And that's what I want to get across. And I think it's very disingenuous of a lot of games journalists and YouTubers coming out and saying, all these entitled fans all wanted Diablo 4, and they should just be happy with what they've got. And I hate... I'll leave it with this. I'll leave you with my last I hate comment. I hate when people say, you should just be happy with what they got, what they give you. Or you should just swallow the shit sandwich so that you hope the next sandwich isn't a shit sandwich. You don't get to tell me a game that I paid for, a game that I would have to pay for, I should just hold my tongue and hold my nose and pay for it in hopes that the next one is good. That's not how it works. That's not how consumerism works. I mean, some people will do it anyway. They'll buy all the things because they're blindly loyal. Which, whatever. If you are, great. I'm glad you love everything. I wish I could love everything too, but not a lot of people love everything. But it's so the logic is so faulty to say you should just accept it and you should just hope that by accepting it they make a better thing next time. What actually happens, everybody, and World of Warcraft is a great example of this. I'm not going to go on too big of a tangent about this, but I'll just say as an aside, what happened with World of Warcraft is once Warlords of Draenor came out, there were a bunch of problems that a lot of people, including myself, were bringing up. Things that were making the game seem less, or seem more shallow, and to make you take more time to do it in the process. And we were pointing these out, and nobody else was agreeing with us, and nobody else was demanding that they remove these things. Cut to the game coming out, and all of a sudden everyone says that. What happens when you just eat whatever shit sandwich you're given is that the next sandwich is then a shittier sandwich, because they're poking you. The company's poking you to see how far can we get you with this bad gameplay design. And they did it again in Legion. And they established an entire new grind and an entire new patch where there was no story at all in 7.2. And an entire new grind of an artifact weapon. And they're like, let's just see how much further we can get this. And now Battle for Azeroth is out, and they're like, let's see how much further we can get this again. Now we have a grind with 3 pieces of gear slots tied to it. Let's see how further we can go now. That's what happens when you just eat a shit sandwich, and you just accept whatever you're given. They keep pushing you, and they don't arbitrarily go, oh, we were wrong, let's go back to the thing that everyone loved. They're thinking, if every company does this, it's not just me saying Blizzard is, the company's primary goal is to make money, so of course they're going to do it. But if you just accept it, they're going to keep making it worse and worse and worse. So, there we go. Diablo Immortal. Whatever. I'm not going to play it. I'm not going to install it. I'm not going to download it. I know if it's going to be free, it's going to be loaded with microtransactions and loaded with ads. Have fun with that, I guess. I'm not going to buy it. My consumer activism is going to be not to pay that. So I would argue all of you who have problems with Diablo Immortal to do the same. I know you might be tempted to download it to see how it is, but if you have a problem with how they announced it, don't download it ever. Don't buy it. Don't spend money on it. Ignore it and move on with your life. And then just be a living human. So, there we go, everybody. That is my review of BlizzCon 2018 in a nutshell. Thanks for watching. Let me know all your thoughts about all of the things. The thing I'm most curious about is your thoughts on the Sarfang cinematic and Diablo Immortal. At least my take on the Diablo Immortal stuff. I'm sorry, I had like a hiccup there for like 30 seconds that didn't come out. But yeah, until then, stay awesome, and I'll see you guys next time. Farewell.